Hey, Shalom, this is Dan. I want to come to you again and share another one of the Torah portions with you. This one is called Vayetze, and in Hebrew it means he went out. Now this is a Torah portion about Jacob and all the things that happened to him. Now if you remember where we left off last time, you might remember that Jacob, he stole his brother Esau's birthright. And Esau was a little upset, if you remember right, and he was going to get his revenge. And when Rebekah heard this, she pleaded with Isaac, hey, we got to let him go for his safety and because of the fact that there are no good women here in town. We need to let him go. And so Rebekah got him to agree to go out and visit with her brother Laban. You might remember Laban from a couple times back there where we kind of did a little skit with Laban and how he heard how the servant had come and when Abraham had sent the servant, and so he was there when the servant came. So he kind of knew the whole family history here. Laban had been there for a while. So all of a sudden we get this portion here where it talks about Jacob going away. And one of the first things that we read about in this portion is that Jacob, he fell asleep on a rock. And I don't know if I would have used a rock as a pillow, but that's what he used. And in that time when he was asleep, God gave him a dream and he saw a ladder. And it's quite an important piece of the puzzle here. It's in this time that God kind of showed him that he was going to pick up the baton from where Abraham and Isaac had left off. Now, go back with me and you remember that Abraham, he was called the father of many nations. God had given him a promise that he was going to have nations or sons that were going to be as countless as the sand and as countless as the stars. And then you got Isaac, and his wife couldn't have any kids, and so he prayed for the womb to be open, and sure enough, she had 2 kids. And so here we are again, and during this dream, God tells Jacob the next piece, the part of the baton that he's supposed to carry. Now look with me here at Genesis 28:14. I'm going to read out of the NIV here for you. A little bit easy to understand. And it says, your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Now doesn't that kind of sound like what we heard God tell Abraham? Count the stars if you can. Count the sand if you can, because that's how many descendants you're going to have. We got the next part of the puzzle, the next baton passing now coming to Jacob. Now Jacob gets to Laban's house and he offers to do some work, but he offers to do some work in hopes of having a reward. See, when he got there, he fell in love with a certain someone. Now it was his cousin, which is kind of creepy these days, but back then it was okay, I guess. And he saw his cousin, Rachel, and he just immediately fell in love with her. Well, he offered to work for 7 years for her hand in marriage. And it says in the Bible that 7 years was nothing. It felt like it was just a couple days. And when his 7 years was done, he had served faithfully. He had done all that Laban had asked him to do. He didn't cause a fuss on the farm there. So he says to Laban, can I have my bride's hand? Laban probably thought it over a little bit, remembered, oh yeah, we struck this deal 7 years ago and it's time to cash in on it. And so he said, sure enough, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage. So the day comes and Jacob is just ecstatic. I mean, he's going to get the love of his life, the one he's been working 7 years for. And he goes through the whole wedding ceremony. They, I assume, have the consummation time, and so he wakes up the next morning and he realizes that he has been with Leah. Now, we don't know much really about Leah at the beginning. All the Bible says is that she had weak eyes. In the Hebrew, that word is rach. She had rach eyes, which can also be termed as tender, or it can be termed as delicate. And so, despite what meaning we're going to use, the fact is that she wasn't the one that Jacob wanted. She was the older sister, and by tradition, when Laban explained it to Jacob, he said, well, our tradition here, our culture, is that we give the oldest daughter's hand in marriage before we give the youngest daughter's hand in marriage. But that's not what Jacob had worked for. That's not what he had. Not what he spent all his time building up to. And so to get this, part of me sometimes wonders this. A couple questions. One, when I was in college, I did just a little bit of drinking, and I can always remember what happened that night. Even if it is a little cloudy, at least in the morning I'm aware of what I did the night before. And so I kind of wonder, with all the dancing and all the partying that was going on during the wedding, just how much did Jacob drink to not know that that was Leah? But then another question that comes to mind is, where was Rachel during the wedding to where she couldn't have warned Jacob that he was not marrying who he thought he was marrying? Just a couple little things to throw out there. But anyway, the service is done. They've consummated. He realizes it's Leah. And then now he goes up to Laban and he says, "What have you done?" And again, Laban explains it to him. This is our culture. And for another 7 years, you can work and you can get Rachel. And so they finish out the week of the wedding with Leah. And the next week he takes Rachel to be his wife. Now, he worked another 7 years for that. And he loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. This is where I think it's interesting that the deceiver, because we know that Jacob was the deceiver, I think this is where the deceiver gets deceived. And not just once, but twice. Because, see, Laban pulled a fast one on him by giving him Leah. So he got deceived once there. But then, I wonder if Rachel's inability to have children right away was also part of that deceiving. See, because Leah, she popped out 4 kids right in a row there. From her we got Reuben and Simeon and Judah and Levi. And so, this whole conquest started of Leah having the faith that her husband loved her now by popping out the boys. And obviously the boys were the big thing back then. That carried on your family name. That was a big thing to have boys. So she just knocked out 4 boys in one shot there. Well, not one shot, but over the course of time, she was the first one to start producing boys, and Rachel has nothing. And then it became a battle of, well, go sleep with my maid and see if that'll help. And so they got a couple more sons from that. And finally, Rachel was able to have a boy. And she had Joseph, who we're going to learn a little bit more about in the weeks coming up here. But she has Joseph, and it becomes the favored child of Jacob. And I wonder, and it's probably true, that obviously he became the favored child because that was the first child from the wife that he wanted from the first day he laid eyes on her. Having the other kids with the servants and having the other kids with Leah, that brought honor to him. That brought a smile to his face. But Leah wasn't who he wanted from the beginning. And so later on, she ends up having Benjamin as well, and she had Benjamin while she passed away. She passed away in childbirth. And we'll learn more about the brothers, and I got, these guys have been showing me some great things about the blessings that was pronounced over these sons later on in life. But I want to skip ahead in the story a little bit more here in the last couple minutes, and I want to talk to you about, see, I call it the brown, the speckled, and the spotted, and it comes right out of the Torah portion there. And here's the deal. Jacob got to a point after he had served his time, and he had served above and beyond his time for both the ladies, even though he only was there for the one to begin with. And so he got to a point where he wanted to move on. He was getting numerous. It was time to move on, and we all get to that point where we've been here long enough, we've outgrown our stay, and so he wanted to take some of the animals with him, and he struck a deal with Laban, and this is almost kind of where the deceiver goes back to being the deceiver. He makes a deal with Laban, and he says, here's what we're going to do, clean cut deal. Every sheep that is white is yours. Every sheep that has any kind of blemish, meaning a brown spot, or brown at all, spots or stripes or any kind of mark that's not white, those would be his. And it was such a black and white type thing to where Laban could go at any time and see Jacob's herd and realize that all those really were sheep that he got to own because of the fact that he put his trademark on there, so to say. They were spotted. They were blemished in some way. They were not the pure white ones that he had struck the deal about. So Jacob gets this idea where he starts to put items in front of the sheep to where when it's mating season, they want to mate with the ones that are blemished. So pretty soon you got more blemished sheep than you have regular sheep. I love this part of the story, and I'll tell you why. It's because this is how I believe sin is. In the aspects of, we are told in the Bible that we should be very careful because our sins will find us out. This is one of those exact moments when if Jacob had taken something that wasn't his, that wasn't part of the agreement, he would have been in sin. So many times we look for the gray. I know for myself, I've been through an addiction and things like that, and there are those times when you try and rationalize things. You try and make your sin not look so bad, or make your need for this sin not look so desperate. And I'm not afraid to tell you, I was addicted to porn for a long time. And I always rationalized it. And I always tried to hide it. And I always tried to pull one over on God, you could say. God, my needs aren't being met with my wife. Or God, I'm just lonely and I'm bummed and la 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 la. And I always rationalized it. But sin is clear cut. It's either you sin or you're not sinning. Those are the only choices. It's black or it's white. I love this story, again, because this is the black and white of sin. If Jacob was robbing Laban, it would have been easy to see. But God blessed Jacob for not lying, for not stealing. Now, he was smart and crafty in how he got his sheep, but he never lied, he never stole, he never did anything wrong. And God blessed him with more and more and more sheep because he did it right. He was faithful to the covenant that he had made with Laban as to what sheep were going to be his. I don't want to be caught in a position in my own life any longer where people look at me and they can see that where I should be having white sheep, I got different kind of colors. Or in this case, where I should be having the speckled sheep, I got white sheep. I don't want to be a thief. I don't want sin to come in and find me out. And I don't want that for you as well. You know, we have an awesome God who is here to forgive us. He knows everything that goes on. And we can't pull a fast one on him, just like Jacob couldn't pull a fast one on Laban. We have an awesome God who is there to forgive us. And he forgave me of my addiction. He forgave me of my sin. He can forgive you. He wants us to live a life that's black and white. And we're going to see when you get into Deuteronomy and Moses is laying down the law for the second time, he specifically states, I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. And then he gives us the answer to the test. He says, choose life. I want to be in a position where my sins don't find me out because there are no sins to be found out. I know I'm human. I know I'm going to mess up, but I don't want that to be something that grabs me anymore. I want it to be something that I say, God, I'm sorry. Right after it happens, God, I'm sorry. Forgive me for my sin. I don't want to be harboring it. I don't want it to find me out because I think I can stick it in a little closet and hide it in the shoebox. I can't. I can't hide anything from God. We can't hide anything from God. Jacob couldn't hide a sheep from Laban. I take from this Torah portion the whole point of I don't want my life to be hiding sin anymore. I don't want there to be any sin to hide. I hope that that's exactly how you feel as well. God bless you. Until we meet again. Thanks.